Well, we'll start with who we've got, and we'll talk about what we've just seen. We should start with you, Tony, because it's your project. As you know, there's a lot of talk in the TV about genre. What is this? Is this a soap? Here he is. Okay.
Please take that picture out of my mind.
As I say, not talking TV, Tony, but is this a soap opera or continuing drama? Is it a crime drama? Dickens, and we see there, in effect, the roots of two kinds of TV, soap opera or continuing drama, episodic drama, cliffhangers, and also with his friend and rival, what do we call him, the birth of the detective drama, and you have both of them.
I mean, the idea was supposed to be a celebration of Dickens, so it has all those things. I dislike the term soap for this. I buy...
That's why I offered you continuing
Thank you very much. I'll take continuing drama, and I'll take episodic. I think that... excuse me.
You know where you've been.
Ovid told us where you've met.
I dislike terms simply because I think people would. It's very easy thing for people to say. It's 20 half hours. It's a format that I fought for. Not very hard. I think the BBC were very supportive, but obviously it was easy. It would have been easier to get to do it 10, 60 minutes. But I was really keen to do that because just in the way that Dickens wrote episodically. That's how he wrote. You know, he kept you waiting. You mentioned Wilkie Collins. I mean, you know, their big thing was make them laugh, make them cry, make them wait. That was what they did. And so it's very easy for people to say, oh, it's kind of it's like a period soap. And they say that, I think it's laziness really. Because soap, surely by its very nature, has to be contemporary, because what soap is a way of reflecting our own lives. And us watching other people making the same mistakes as we make and making judgments on that. So for me, soap can only be contemporary. So period soap, I don't think can exist.
But this is, as we see particularly in the character Inspector Bucket, this is, you are playing, and there's that great exchange you have with Venus and Thomas' character. This is the beginning of detective drama. You're playing one of the first detectives of all time.
Yeah, I know that.
It's the birth of a genre.
I know, and everything else after this is dependent on this. It's fantastic.
In the creation of a character, because you have a little bit of Inspector Bucket from Dickens, but how much in continuing drama, we can't use the other term, the writers give out Bibles and descriptions of characters. What were you, the actors, tell me what you were given about your character?
Well, I got a lot from Bleak House, you know. Of course, because Tony did too. He's in a different stage in Bleak House. He's beginning to form a methodology and an approach, and that's what's fascinating about it. How he's putting together the new detective with his help.
Yes. Well, the genius of Tony Jordan is that he made my character Middle Eastern. Actually from Syria. That's what it is. But he's somebody who is a taxidermist, and also we see the beginnings of detectivism and early terrorism. He's radicalized some of his stuffed animals. And he's somebody who actually upsets the West and the East, because in the West they think he's a terrorist, and the East are upset because when he stuffed a weasel it had a tremendous resemblance to the Prophet Muhammad. These are storylines you're going to see. Genius, absolute genius.
And Tony, I was given a lot of twists there. The storylining of it, because you've got the two, so far in the two we've seen, you've got those two very strong narrative strands, which are the murder story and then the romance stroke blackmail. What happened? And that's an example you talk about where you have freedom, particularly in the character of what happened to Miss Havisham.
Yeah, I think when you approach something like this, some things are a gift. You know, I felt like a child being a toy shop, very literally, because it was like, where do you start? And the two things that always struck me that were the most fascinating things were, I'd always, you know, I grown up watching adaptations of Miss Havisham, and every actress came and brought something different, but essentially the same character at the same point in her life. And I was fascinated in what led her to that point. So that was a gift, that was a joy. The second thing was, for me, was the fact that Jacob Marley was always dead. He was always, even in the Muppets Christmas Carol, he was dead. So to see a walking, living, breathing Jacob Marley, so once you make that step, actually then making the step of what to do with him, kill him. That's what Dickens did. So some of these things, they literally are a gift. They are literally they are the term no-brainers. So I took the easy stuff first.
And Tom, as Tony said, you were everyone's playing Dickensian characters. You were playing a sort of prequel, a Dickensian prequel.
Yeah, I think it was, as Tony said, everyone knows Miss Havisham as this kind of embittered, vengeful, eccentric lady living in her wedding dress in this house for 25 years. And when I first auditioned, I thought, oh my God, I'm not old enough to play her yet. And then I realised that they were doing this adaptation where she was a young woman, and the fact that that had never been done before was really exciting, because it's exciting and daunting because you get to create this whole new character. And I like the idea that actually she was a young woman who was just full of hope and just fell in love with the wrong person, and then it went tragically wrong, and it turns into this kind of very strange life for her. But also, you tell someone you're playing Miss Havisham before we know her as Miss Havisham, and everyone's like, wow, that's an iconic character. What are you going to do with that? And it's kind of daunting, but I think in the way you have that freedom because it's never been done before. So it was sort of exciting, and I like the idea that she's not just this strange, mad woman, but actually she was just a young woman who was given this gift of having a very powerful position within her father's business, and actually it just went horribly wrong.
It could start a whole new precedent, actually. We could have Dickensian kids as well, as a concept. Have like Fagin be a young single parent raising up kids. I think what Tony started, I'd love to see a Shakespearean mashup. I'd love to see a Woody Allen mashup. I'd like to see Annie Hall and Fielding Mellish and Zelig and all this. I think what we're seeing here, I have to say it's the first time I've seen it. It was the birth of a genre. It's something tremendously new, and I didn't want to win. Did you feel like that? I was genuinely.
Although
You can clap.
serious point about it. Shakespearean, although tempting, the plays are set in different countries and eras. Whereas the thing about Dickens is that there is a world.
There is a world, but the timelines were kind of crazy. The concept behind Dickensian is that where we are is inside Dickens' head. We're inside his imagination. There's that famous painting of all Dickens' characters in front of him sitting in his study. So we're inside, which means that there are no rules. So Dickens could have had in his imagination, little Nell can live or die or do whatever he wanted to do. But when it came to write the novel, at some point, he chose for her to die. But because I'm not in the world of the novel, I'm in the world of his imagination. Everything's free. It's completely free.
You could easily call this show The Only Way is Early Victorian London. That's the word. It's a joke, but that's creative. I think it's really good.
Ned and Caroline, so you've got variations along this line of the extent to which the characters are known. You're both playing characters who are well known, who have been played by lots of people. But tell me, each of you, how you approached
my character,
yeah.
Scrooge.
Because there've been hundreds of those.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's one of the problems of being an actor, because people are going to judge you. It's the problem. But Alistair's Sim wasn't available. I'm tall and sort of gangly and quite fond of money. So, sometimes the parts are quite, don't quite fit, or they're harder to get into than other parts. And sometimes they fit quite easily. I spend a lot of time with my laptop and a few online accounts, putting password, and these numbers come up, and that's my money.
choice whether you just go on the script or whether you go back to the book? What did you do?
I feel slightly fraudulent because I actually am in this series. You just saw me come out of a door today, but I do turn up at other points. I go back in the door.
You have lines later on.
I do, only one. It's very good though. I read the scripts as if I were coming to any television job really, and I looked at the quality of the writing, and I didn't really care that it was about Dickens. I wanted to know what the storytelling would be like, because that's what I'm always interested in, and the quality of the of the written word. And there is without doubt, and I haven't said this to you, and it's quite embarrassing with sitting so close to me, but they are some of the best scripts I've ever read, and they are. These characters are so alive and so relevant, and so therefore it was just a joy to kind of step in, get your bonnet on, and get stuck in, you know. And so for me, it was really about just the relationship with these people, and I haven't seen it until just this second. Actually, it's the first time I've seen it. Well done! It's really good. It's really good. It's really it's everything I thought it was going to be. It's riveting, and those cliffhangers are just fabulous, really fabulous. So yeah,
And Tony, you're a great Dickensian scholar, so just right with Miss Havisham.
No, please don't.
No, but you know your stuff.
I've read a book.
With Miss Havisham, how much backstory is there?
There's a paragraph in Great Expectations. I think when Pocket is talking to Pip at the table, I think he literally 10 lines, but 10 lines of genius that I've turned into 10 hours. So everything is there. Everything is sourced from Dickens in one way or another, and that was as a prequel, that was a joy. That was an easy thing to write.
And what was your biggest departure from Dickens?
I wanted to do something really early on because I wanted to take Dickens' community with. I didn't want to fall out with anybody. I mean, I'm not. I bring an irreverence to it. That's kind of my thing, and I think that you have to have that irreverence because otherwise you'd be terrified every time you sat down to write. And so I wanted to make a statement really early on that you don't know what you're going to expect, and you don't know whether Miss Havisham is going to marry and live happily ever after. Because I might do that. And little Nell didn't die, and that was my big thing. We actually saw the moment when I resurrected Little Nell. Because I remember the stories of Dickens going to New York and people on the dockside with placards, please don't kill Little Nell. And the bastard killed her anyway. So it's that. So I think that was probably the biggest thing.
Although it's interesting how attention works, because she could still die at a different point.
Exactly, and that's the thing.
And as you say, I was going to say about Miss Havisham, that we think we know what's going to happen, but we may not.
Exactly.
And that's how you want it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a mistake to think, to watch those 2 episodes, I think, I know how it's going to pan out. No, you don't. Because,
no, you really don't actually, because the timelines really keep you guessing all the time.
And the joy, one of the biggest joys, I think, for me was I've written a scene between Scrooge and Fagin, and even Charles Dickens didn't do that. I mean, that was wow. That was great.
And the other thing for all of you, actually, any of you, we started used to, is that there can be a Dickensian acting style, particularly on TV, in the same way that there's a Shakespearean style or a Jane Austen style. And it seems to me you don't do that. It is the way it's written. It's written more in a more contemporary way. But to me, in your performance of Bucket, it's knowing. I mean, you know that we've seen Morse and all the rest of them, detectives going home to their wives and all of that. So, but it's a contemporary acting style.
Well, that's a relief. I was worried about over-characterising, really, because Dickens provides you with these very robust characters from their name right through, and he's talked about a lot of personal tics that Bucket has, and I wanted to include those, but as long as they weren't overdone,
Well, no, that's what I mean, is there is a sort of caricature of grotesque Dickens style, which I think you avoid.
Thank you.
I think
But he hasn't.
Yeah.
I think you just cast grotesque actors. But I think that's the beauty of it. I don't think it's knowingly intellectual. I mean, it's one of those things where it's almost like a popular drama pretending to be intellectual, or an intellectual drama pretending to be populist. But it's got all of the Dickens themes there. I mean, Dickens is so current. If you look at all the themes that are throughout it, it could be today. You're going to look at the way kids are being treated. You're looking at the extremes of poverty and wealth. I mean, even when we're talking about maybe doing a mashup of Greek tragedy, and you see all those themes like incest, infidelity, murder.
But that's EastEnders, though, they've done it.
I watched an episode of Hollyoaks. But it's all there, and it's kind of underplayed, and I love the fact that there's this, you just don't know what's going to happen. I felt quite tense watching it, so I was very happy about that.
Although, tell you, we talk Owen mentions the Greek tradition, and John York, when he was at EastEnders, he used to say, Greek it up, and use those storylines from Greek. And it is amazing when you talk to, in the past, the very popular writers on TV, the way they would always invoke Dickens. I mean, John Sullivan, you know, when he Fools and Horses, he's a big Dickensian mind of Ian Griffiths. Because it's what everyone had studied at school. I mean, John Mortimer Rumpole, he was a big Dickensian. It's huge influence on popular TV.
Of course it is. I mean, I love John Sullivan, and you can't be a writer, I don't think. I mean, what I loved about Dickens was he was a popular author. He loved an audience. He was a showman. He used to go out on tour and act out all the parts himself. I mean, he was just a showman. He loved that, and he loved an audience. That's why he wrote it the way that he wrote, I think. And so I completely understand that, because I write for a popular audience. I love mainstream TV. I love ratings. I love people watching what I do. I want 3 people to watch it on ITV7. I want my stuff to be out there, and I want to be part of what's going on. And I think Dickens was like that. So that's he's always been a big influence on me.
And now to Caroline, one of the things we know about Dickens, I think, from Claire Tomlin's book particularly, he was desperate. He wanted to be an actor. I mean, that's what he wanted to be, and I think that must help in his characterisation.
I certainly feel that there is that showman comes out in all the characters. They kind of are. They're a gift to actors, really. I mean, I have loved playing one of the most unpleasant people. She's probably the most unpleasant person I've ever played, and she has very good reasons for that. I mean, she's a social climber, and she's manipulative, and she uses her husband horribly and promises him sexual favours and delivers hardly ever to get him to get himself a promotion. I mean, they're just joyful things to play. Those things, there's in every scene. She uses 100 different ways of manipulating whoever she's with, and that's an actor writing, isn't it? That character, and and for actors it's just such fun, and for audiences it's fun. I mean, I'm hoping that my children will come to this. We'll learn about Dickens through this, because it's suddenly really making it accessible for them. I think for the youngsters as well, because they'll recognise it.
Just on Dickens, I mean. When I was a kid, well, I didn't read any Dickens. I knew one, Tony Jordan. But just those. I used to watch Doctor Who, and there was the Cybermen and the Yetis and all these things come on, and they were just thrilling. But when you saw these Dickensian films when you were a child, there's this darkness and these boarding schools and children, no parents and beatings and stuff. It was very scary, My brother used to hide behind the sofa for Doctor Who, but Dickens was the one that would have me live in the room. That's probably why I didn't read much.
And I should mention this point that all of this is in a friendly way embargoed until Wednesday for everyone in the audience. But Tony probably isn't going to tell us very much at all about what happens next. But in the structure you set up, I mean, one of the things that excited me is that Bucket, given that all Dickens' great characters are witnesses or suspects, presumably he has to go and interview all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that Bucket is the first detective. I just think that's amazing. And then to find out, not get the opportunity not only to do that, but also do the world's first CSI department. It's like the godfather of forensics, which is scarier than I think. So yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And of course, yes, we have to go on and interview those other characters. And again, that's the joy of bringing characters together that glorious characters that have never been occupied the same space before.
And something I noticed, which is a technical thing, it's always said that it's on in radio drama that the characters say the names of each other a lot because otherwise you don't know who they are. It's quite extraordinary how often they say the names, and that's because there's a thrill for the audience when they discover who these people are, all in the same story for the first time. So that opening sequence you've got where it's Mrs. Garrett, I mean, that's quite deliberate, isn't it?
Yes, because it's a treat. It's a treat. You want to do two things. You want the audience to kind of be looking and thinking, oh, that's the and then you want to say, yeah, it's exactly that. So you want to reward that as well. So, yeah, that's a joy. I mean, you can't sit doing this stuff. I mean, just either laughing out loud or just the excitement was, I mean, we were putting it together the first time. Yeah, it was tangible.
And how much do you think about, because the directors, producers, actors and doing it, how much do you think about how it will be done, I mean, the style of it?
It was the biggest thing right at the very beginning, which was how do you do this? And we decided quite early on, and that's why Polly Hill talked earlier about Michael Ralph, our designer, our production designer. Because I talked to Michael really early on, and we knew that the only way to do a show like this was to build it, was to build the world, because Dickens used weather and atmosphere in his work as another character. So he used snow and fog and mist, and he used all those things. I don't know what, I can't tell you how difficult it is just to get a night shoot these days. You know, forever you write something at night and you get a line producer saying, could it be 4:20? Everything's so expensive. So, but Dickens used all those things, and all the things that Ned was talking about, that atmosphere, we needed that. So, in the end, everything that you see, we built. And
you're the producer, so presumably.
Oh yeah, I had to say it. So we created the world, and so we had control over everything. So I've got a big snow button. So you can walk on set just like it's not really 4 buttons, but it feels like
It does feel like that.
it's a snow button.
And that lovely moment where you just see the old curiosity shop in the background, I mean, that's an example. So you actually get a laugh or a sort of warm feeling on a shop sign, which is how you can do it in the Dickens world. And snow and Christmas, again, that it had to be really to start at Christmas.
I think so. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to disappoint people who love Dickens by being a smart ass and saying, oh, I know nobody says Christmas and Bob Cratchit, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this completely different thing instead. It's like, and then piss everybody off in the process. So the idea is to bring a Dickens audience, to not disappoint them, but to give them something new. I mean, if they love Dickens' work, they will love the portrayal of the young Miss Havisham, what happens. They will love that. And I think that it's true that we'll bring a whole new generation, hopefully, as Colin says, to Dickens. Because you can watch Dickensian, and then you can kind of find out what happened next by reading the novels, in some cases. So yeah, I think that's really exciting.
But also, Dickens have given you, we saw it in those episodes, characters who interact with lots of other people because of Nancy's profession. That opens up other storylines to you, detective. And again, a direct overlap with continuing drama. The pub, the way in which people go to the pub. So all of that helps you to bring it together.
Yeah, look, those community sets always work. There's a reason they work. Is that those community places work within the working class. I mean, when I grew up, everybody went to the pub. We went to the pub while mum was cooking Saturday dinner, and then we came back. And I used to wait for the moment when I was 18, and I could go to the pub when we were there. And I understand that world. And that was the world where everybody met, and it was the world where even the vicar after the thing would come and sit in the corner and have a wee drop of whatever it was he was having a wee drop of. And so that was a melting pot of different classes and different people. So I think it's a dramatic device, yes, but I think one based in reality.
And everything now goes second, third, series, Broadchurch, 3. Many others are going to. Indeed, Dr. Foster 2 they're doing at the moment. Is there further potential here?
I have storyline 60 episodes. They're 20 here. And I know Charlotte probably has, so I'll pitch later in the
But also, more importantly for the actors, are they all in there?
I've kept my bonnet.
I can't tell you that because then you know who lives or dies.
Well, I know, that's what I was trying to find out.
Yeah, I know, it's really sneaky and spotty. No, I think it's if you think that, I think in the last count, I'm not sure, please don't quote me, but I think Dickens created something in excess of 2,000 characters. I've used 30. So I'd be quite happy to see a Dickensian in 24. Just because there's so much to do, so much I haven't done.
But also, I think Bucket and Venus, I mean, there's a clear spin-off series there. I can see that. Yeah.
Yes, I think there is.
Yeah.
And if I was smart, I'd have already pitched that.
Could we bring up the lights and then we'll take questions? We'll get through as much as we possibly can. Portmanteau questions like the actors your favourite. We may not get through everyone, just to do as many as possible. We'll try.
I'm putting all his characters together. I think he would have done that. I think he'd love the idea of that.
And when you say all his characters, just because Mystery of Edwin Drood didn't finish, other people have finished it, is there something from each of the books?
No, it's you know, it's kind of it's impossible. I felt like I was kind of juggling machetes. It's kind of you can't contain everything. You just so I think we use characters from 7 novels in series 1. And then the beauty of it is that the idea, the reason that I've storylined so far in front is that things that I'm doing in series 1, I can rest in the second run, and then I can move time on and come back to them in season 3. And then the things that I was doing in series 2, I can pick up again in series 9.
Is this all signed up?
No, it's not. We're commissioned for one series, but I'm really working my tail off.
So we've got a microphone over there, and then if we get a microphone down to the front row, here. Yes.
Okay. Hello. We're members of the Dickens Fellowship, and I thought we thought it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it's really hard not trying to analyse the characters and what they're in Dickens. You know, your mind's darting about, you're trying to watch the plot, and you're trying to work out who they are and what they really did, and that was difficult. One of the problems with adaptations is, with Dickens, you said it was dark. They miss the humour a lot. When they do TV adaptations, they always have to cut characters, and they often cut the humorous characters and the funny side of it. But my favourite character is Quilp, and is he going to be in it, is what I want to know.
Series 9.
It's in my storyline document. I just can't tell you for which series. So, but I love Quilp too. I think he's an amazing character, and I can't wait to get my hands on him. And what I've storylined for him, I think is a thing of beauty.
If obviously the money can be agreed, are all the actors available?
Oh, they signed up for another series. It was so cheap, we just signed up for 10 years.
No, they do that in America, don't they? They 7 years. Yeah.
Just the one at the moment
Yeah.
for most of us.
Yes, gentlemen at the front.
Okay, first of all, congratulations. We're getting into BAFTA award-winning territory here. 10 minutes in, then it was very clear. Thank you.
That's for you.
And congratulations on a brilliant mashup. But you couldn't have pulled it off had the script not been as powerful, as strong as it was. And you gave your players real space to develop their characters and do their utmost. So congratulations to all concerned. Now, we're watching a mashup here of cinema and television. But what were we really watching tonight? Was it cinema, television?
I think it was television. I think I wrote it for television. I think it is television. I think it looks great on a big screen. But you know what? Good stuff always does. And shit looks like shit, but bigger.
But as you said at the beginning, which you gave us, But the 30-minute episode is absolutely TV.
That's complete TV. I mean, this, make no mistake, this is designed for a mainstream BBC One audience, a television audience. And I love the fact that you can introduce people to Dickens that haven't ever read a book. So I think, people that are here from the Dickens Fellowship, I think it may mess with your heads a little bit. I think that's probably a good thing. But I think that you can, just because it kind of brings Dickens back to life in some respects. But I think you can watch it if you've read every book, and if you're a scholar, and if you've written a dissertation on Dickens, you can still enjoy it. And if you've never read a word, you can still enjoy this. You don't need to know anything about Dickens. And if, like the most of us, your favourite Dickens adaptation is Muppets Christmas Carol, you can still enjoy it as well. So I think it is literally, it's for a mainstream audience, and you don't have to be a Dickens scholar to enjoy it.
I think some of the long handheld and very long single shots give it a cinematic feel, which is Harry, the director, Harry Bradbury. So I think that's potentially which is causing that different feel to it. That these long shots which are sweeping around, and you're seeing different characters all in one shot, basically.
Well, that's about shooting it in the set, isn't it, as well? Like, you are enabled because of your, because you don't, night shoots can happen, and all those things. You are enabled then to do those beautiful, they are beautiful shots. Amazing shots, actually, incredible camera work. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
and therefore it is cinematic. But I don't mean that as a compliment to cinema. I mean, I think television's. I love television too. And I make no apology for television. I don't think I think television can tell a story in as good a way, if not a better way, sometimes. And I think we just happen to have some beautiful camera work on this as well.
Yes, lots of. While we're here, can we get that microphone to the gentleman in the second row, and then. I haven't done this side yet. I'll do the side in a moment. We've got 2 hands up there, so we can get the microphone round there, yeah. And we'll start there.
Question for Tony again. You talked about it was a Dickensian world, and people are talking about different characters appearing in this Dickensian world. Is there room for Charles Dickens himself to appear in a sort of Alfred Hitchcock cameo kind of role?
No. I think it's really weird. I mean, it's kind of, I'm trying to be a guardian of the concept, because I think it would have been easy to be pulled about a little bit. And if I didn't completely understand what it was, there's so much to try and get your head around it. If you don't have that vision and stick to it, I think you can go a little bit off course. And so the concept that this world exists only within Dickens' imagination. We're inside his head. We're not his novels, we're not where he lived as a child, we're not him imagining himself. We are within the imagination of Charles Dickens. Because in the imagination of Charles Dickens, every single one of his characters, every single one of his locations, everything can exist and coexist. So I think you would you'd go off format if suddenly he strode through and feel a bit dirty.
Might you see him in the mirror?
Well, we're in his head, as you say. So.
We're in his head, so we're seeing him. We're kind of in him anyway.
Although it's interesting, just as we were watching that, I was thinking that a lot of people being drawn to this mashup idea at the moment. Penny Dreadful, he uses characters from many different stories, Frankenstein Chronicles. On Radio 4, they're doing with Zola at the moment. They've taken Zola's 20 novels, and it's a way of getting away from the single adaptation. I mean, it's much more freeing, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think I was influenced by anything. I think that
No, I'm just saying it's interesting that people are looking at different ways of telling these stories.
I think it is. I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Either you're inspired by the subject matter, in which case I think that can happen individually, or if you're a cynic, you can say it's a way of being a brand without being a brand. So it's kind of a way of branding something, but without having to do the same thing over again. So you can be a Dickens, but you don't have to be an adaptation, but you still get to keep the brand. So, and I don't. But for me, it was purely a realization that these are some of the most well-drawn. Some of them are a bit 2-dimensional, I'll say, but in the majority of Dickens'
Go on, this is fascinating.
characters,
Be controversial with the Dickens people here. Who are the worst characters in Dickens?
no, I'm not even going to do that. Mrs. Bumble was a joy to kind of do some more with
Yeah.
it, because, look, I mean, I'm a member of Dickens Fellowship, so hello, fellowships. You know, we'll also occasionally Dickens, people were bad because he needed someone bad. And that was kind of it. So the joy of those kind of characters, and then, you know, characters like Compton, you know, we see who's there, he's self-evident in books like Great Expectations, but suddenly we get to dig into character and to understand kind of more about him. But I forgot what the question was now. Now I'm rambling, and so I'm going to stop.
It was about brands, but it's you were talking. But he is a brand. I mean, it's there in the title. He's one of the very few writers to become an adjective in that way, Dickensian.
Yeah,
and it means something.
It does mean something. I mean, we've tried to keep away from the image of Dickens. You know, we talked about. I mean, at one point it was in the titles. All those silhouettes came to create the head of Charles Dickens, and that was the original kind of thing. But I didn't want to alienate an audience who didn't know Charles Dickens, who would never. I wanted to bring new people to Charles Dickens. So we've policed that quite carefully. So we've got the brand because it's in the title, but we haven't kind of labelled it.
And question over there.
What is it about these characters that you think still makes them relevant today, and that people, the audience watching this show, will identify with?
That'd be good for the actors, yes. So, why are these characters so powerful? Tuppence, you've got an amazing character there, haven't you?
Yeah, I suppose what Dickens was really good at doing was writing all aspects of humanity, you know, finding the darkness and the nuance of all of his characters. And I think everyone knows what it's like to fall in love and to get their heart broken. But what's interesting is that we don't have the context of that era. So I remember when I first auditioned for it, and Harry, the director of the first few episodes, said to me, you know, a lot of people get their heart broken when they fall in love, but not everyone sits in their house for 25 years in their wedding dress. What is it that makes that happen to someone? And is it the context of that period, or is it something within that person that is triggered and then it kind of sends them off the edge? But also, Harry said to me, I see something in you that I can imagine you doing that. Yeah, I guess that's flattering. But yeah, I think it's just that he understands those kind of intricate things about humans, which are, you know, humanity is always relevant throughout the ages, and it just depends on the context of the period, I suppose, and people can always relate to what these characters are going through, but it's just nice to see it in a different period, I guess. That's what's nice about watching period dramas, is that we know a certain amount about that period, but to kind of delve into these characters' lives and how actually they go about their daily lives as we do is a completely different story.
He also sort of gives some kind of instructions on how to live and how to be nice to other people, don't be so mean. Which is, you know, sort of instruction handbook for life that's still relevant, universal.
And I would just say in that scene you had that you're playing characters who are astonishingly familiar from the culture, but this is before people even know what it actually is. I mean, it's an amazing thing to get to play, I think.
I didn't know much about the character of Venus. I mean,
No, I noticed that.
One thing I learned from Stephen is it's always good to learn your lines. Yeah, but it was, it's a difficult thing for me to even talk about relevance, because I was sat in a press conference 6 years ago when I was about to play Fagin in Oliver on the West End, and someone asked the same question: what's the relevance? Is it relevant that you're an Iranian guy playing? And I had Cameron McIntosh sat next to me here, and I said, me playing Fagin, Iranian, I think it's more relevant that he's a paedophile. And they said, what do you mean? I said, why do you think they call him the Artful Dodger? He spent 4 years with Fagin, didn't contract AIDS. And Cameron McIntosh said, we stop it, this is fine. And I kept giving answers like that, and they stopped it. And, it's the shortest ever press conference we ever had. Any Dickens for the Dickens Fellowship. So I'm not good at answering those kind of questions. But I just didn't know much about the people are still laughing at the paedophile joke. It's a difficult one for me because Venus was someone we didn't know much about. I mean, there's very little on the page. He was in the very final book of Charles Dickens, Our Mutual Friend, and all we knew he was a taxidermist. So, yeah.
What I love about it is that everyone is compromised by money, even the money lenders. I mean, even especially the money lenders. So that's kind of contemporary or internal.
I think Dickens, one of Dickens, the biggest thing was social injustice, and that's riddled through Dickensian, obviously. And I think living in the society at the moment is inequality and social justice. So I think it's incredibly relevant. I don't think there's any the themes that are in any of the 20 episodes that you can't find some kind of parallel with.
So I've neglected this side. I've got a light at night. Is there anywhere over here? Yes, there is. At the end of this, we'll just bring your microphone down.
I just think it's a marvellous achievement, Mr. Jordan,
Thank you.
to take a man's work of 30 years, because the novels span 30 years in Dickens' life, and to turn them together, and also to present the subtext that Dickens couldn't do. For instance, Nancy, he wrote the book in 1837, and you're able to present her as a teenage prostitute, and he couldn't. This is something that modern television can do, which he wasn't able to do. So in many ways, you've freed up things for Dickens. Great achievement.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the checked shirt there, get the microphone across. Just bring it back.
Tony, I'm sure you've taken a few liberties with Dickens, but could you just talk a little bit about what you feel is the greatest risks you've taken with Dickens, and also what's given you the most opportunity?
Oh, God. I think the greatest risks for me
was me, obviously.
Was obviously Barcelona, obviously. That was a stroke of genius. I think it was, look, if I'm honest, it was about pissing off the Dickens community. I think that really early on, I thought, can I do that? Can I take this on? Look, everything I've read and everything I've seen of Charles Dickens' work teach me very, very clearly, with intense clarity, that he's got more talent in his little finger than I'd probably like to have in my lifetime. And so that is very daunting. So the most difficult part is to sit down with another man's work. I mean, we talked about John Sullivan earlier, you know, and it's kind of, you know, and I love John, and we had very similar backgrounds, and it would feel like me sitting down to write an episode of Only Fools and Horses. I don't know how I could do that. And I felt very much like that with Dickens. I don't know if I can do this. Am I arrogant enough to even try? Unfortunately, I was. And as for the best things and the opportunities it gave me, I think, you know, I mentioned really briefly early on to create the world's first detective and forensic scientist partnership, to write scenes between Miss Havisham and Honoria Barbary, who those of you will know who could or could not become Lady Dedlock later in the series. To put those two people together, to walk into the Three Cripples pub and actually physically to do this on set, and to look that way and to see Inspector Bucket and Mr. Venus sitting at one table, to see Ebenezer Scrooge and Jacob Marley sitting at another, to see Mrs. Gamp sitting with Fanny Biggity-Rich, to see all these different characters all in the same place, that's an opportunity that not many writers will ever get.
But just sort of coming towards the end of it, I'm worried about the back. Yes, we've got a light-coloured shirt and this there.
Tony, you mentioned you're worried about pissing off the Dickens community. Have you shown it to any of them? Have you got any feedback from them about what they made through?
Well, some of them are here.
Yeah, look, I had. That's Dickens.
They're walking in. They're all coming. We had three Dickens experts, three scholars working on the show constantly that gave me guidance. In as much as I would talk to them about ideas, we talked to them about the world. I talked to them about opportunities as something I haven't done. As something that, you know, so it was very inclusive in that way.
there were a couple of times when they said, "Oh, you can't really do that." Those were the things that interested me most, and I kind of went there.
Look, too tantalising. What did they tell you not to do?
I think what I tried to do with Oliver Twist was probably the most contentious. And I can't really tell you.
Don't start on and off on that one.
I can't really tell you what I did, but it's a slightly. What interested me is to take an audience that's grown up watching and reading about the story of Oliver Twist, and you know that story intimately, and to give you the same story, to re-deliver it to you in a completely different way that gives you a completely different set of emotions. I think that's really interesting. But obviously some people said you shouldn't really mess with that because that's kind of a favourite. I don't mess with it, it all happens. We've got a wonderful Mysteries Department. We've just come at it from a slightly different direction. So I was inclusive with Dickens experts, apart from those that have just left. It seemed to work.
In fact, the reason people are leaving is that we've run it over because it's going well. Anyway, we've got to stop now. But the things we learned tonight, there are another 18 episodes of Dickensian to come, possibly another 40 beyond that with the BBC, and then the spin-off, Venus and Buckingham. Forward to. So all those have come. The Dickensian starts on Boxing Day.
Possibly 7 o'clock.
Two episodes. So thank you to all of you, and thank you very much to the creator and the...
Very good, yeah? Excellent.